Hello, students. Welcome to Criminal Evidence and Proof. This is your instructor, Adela Kowalski Garza. And as you know, I'm an attorney and I work as an assistant district attorney for Cameron County, Texas, under your district attorney, Luis Saenz. I had promised you an interview of Mr. Saenz so that you would know the role that a prosecutor does in the criminal justice system. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our Cameron County District Attorney, Luis V. Saenz. At this time, I'm wearing a mask, but for your information, nobody is 6 feet or closer to me. So I'm going to take off the mask, and so will Mr. Saenz when he comes to this chair. Thank you.
Good morning. And as Adela mentioned, we are observing the protocols for the COVID, and we are wearing our masks here at the office. Everybody has to wear a mask here at the office, and we're social distancing and taking care of ourselves so to protect our family and our community. But as she mentioned, we're here in a room, and the folks that are here filming are, at least 10, 12 feet away from me. So having said that, I am going to remove my mask to be able to speak a little better with you. First of all, good morning again. And my name is Luis V. Saenz, and I have the honor and the pleasure of serving as your district attorney. And I'm going to, first of all, take a few minutes to commend you for what you're doing in the sense of continuing your education. I think that is great. I think that some of you, if you are like Adela and I, will probably be the first ones in your family to pursue a degree, to pursue a career, a professional career. And I know it's difficult. I know it's expensive. And I know that it's very challenging. But if it wasn't worth it, then it wouldn't, call for a sacrifice. So I want to commend you for continuing your studies, for trying to better yourself, and I wish you the best. And I hope that someday maybe one of you will be sitting here addressing other students as a district attorney or as a prosecutor, as Adela just did. So again, my congratulations. I know that behind each one of you is somebody that's supporting you. In other words, you've gotten this far, but I'm sure you recognize that you haven't done it by yourself. Behind each one of you is a mother, is a father, is abuelito, abuelita, a brother, an older sister that's pushing for you and supporting you and also wishing you the best. So again, thank you for doing what you're doing. And let me move on by talking about the office of the district attorney. And what I'm going to do is divide it into two components. I'm going to talk about the administrative part of it. In other words, what the office is made up and how many people are here and what we do. And then after that, I'm going to move into the prosecution component, which is really what the office consists of and what our main priority here is. The district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. In other words, you have a chief of police, you have a sheriff. The district attorney is above the chiefs of police and the sheriffs. And it is our primary duty, and it is our sole objective to provide for a safe community. Let me repeat that. Our objective here is to provide for a safe community. And we do that by working with all the different agencies that I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes. The office operates with a budget of about $10 million. The office is composed of 108 staff. We have 41 ADAs. An ADA is an assistant district attorney like Adela. They are lawyers. They are prosecutors, and we're going to get into that in more detail in a few minutes. To support us, we have what we call 47 support staff, and these are paralegals. These are mostly young men and ladies that really work behind the scenes and really do the heavy lifting every day. When you see like a show on television where they're trying somebody in court, you see the judge and you see the jury and you see the defense lawyer and the witness on the stand, and you see the prosecutor. In order for that prosecutor to show up in court and to prosecute that case, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work from the police department. It took a lot of work from our staff here in preparing that case. So not a day goes by that we recognize the support that the support staff does for us in getting us ready. We have investigators. We have 20 investigators that also do a lot of legwork. When we're getting ready to prosecute, it never fails that we need additional witnesses, that we need pictures, we need medical records, we need maps, we need sketches, whatever we may need, physical evidence. And these investigators are the ones that go out into the community and look for these witnesses, bring the medical records, bring whatever we may need to prosecute that case. So the staff is 108 strong. It's a big family, and I'm going to talk about what it is to work at the DA's office on any given day. We prosecute what we call felonies and misdemeanors. Felonies are what we call the most serious crimes. Felonies are those if you get convicted for a felony, you are maybe liable to penitentiary time, and we prosecute misdemeanor cases. Misdemeanor cases are where if you're found guilty, you may be liable for jail time. On any given year, we prosecute about 6,000 felonies and about 12,000 misdemeanors. We prosecute in different courts. If some of you all have gotten a speeding ticket, hopefully you haven't, but if you know of somebody that has gotten a speeding ticket, usually by a DPS officer, you are summoned to go to a JP court, Justice of the Peace Court. We prosecute in those 10 different JP courts throughout the county. There's one in Port Isabel, 2 in Brownsville, 2 in Harlingen, 2 in San Benito, 1 in Rio Hondo, and 1 in La Feria. So we prosecute in 10 different JP courts. We prosecute in 5 county courts, and those county courts are located here at the main courthouse building at 974 East Harrison. And we prosecute in 7 district courts. So as you can tell, we prosecute in about 22 different courts on any given day. Right now, because of the COVID situation, we are not having jury trials, but we are continuing with the business by doing Zoom, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We have different divisions within the DA's office. A division is a group of individuals, prosecutors, investigators, and paralegals that focus on particular kind of cases. And the most important units that we have here that do that are the child abuse unit. The child abuse unit, as the name will tell you, specializes in prosecuting child abuse cases. Even though all cases are different and even though all cases are important, the most important cases for us here are the child abuse cases. And as you can tell, literally, child abuse cases where a child, and by child we mean anybody younger than 12, and usually the age is about 8 years old, is sexually abused by an adult. These are very, very difficult cases because it involves a very, very young, tender age child. Imagine yourself as an adult having to come into a courtroom for whatever you may have to come into a courtroom. It might be civil, it might be criminal, but just imagine yourself as an adult coming into a courtroom and raising your hand to take the oath that you're going to be truthful, and getting on a witness stand and having a lawyer ask you questions, and you look to your right and you see a judge with a robe. You look to your left and you see a bailiff with a gun and a badge. You look a little further in front of you and there's a court reporter. And then you look to right in front of you and there's 12 people. 12 people that are looking at you and observing every move that you make, observing and listening to every question that you answer. That is very, very difficult, and it is very dramatic, and it is very stressful. So imagine you doing that as an adult. Now imagine an 8-year-old having to get on that witness stand and going through the same sensations and going through the same situation that I just talked about. It is very, very demanding and very stressful. So because of that, we have prosecutors that specialize in being able to talk to children, to young children, and being able to encourage them and being able to prepare them to answer these questions that are going to be very awkward and very, disturbing questions about somebody that may have touched him in the wrong way, somebody that may have caressed him in the wrong way, and somebody that may have gone as far as having sex with him against the law. But that's what our child abuse unit does, and I'm very proud of the work that they do and of the child abuse unit itself. In addition to the child abuse unit, we have what we call the domestic violence unit. The domestic violence unit, again, just like the name says, deals with domestic violence. Domestic violence is where it impacts both men and women, but for the most part, it's women that are being abused, being assaulted by their boyfriends, by their husbands, by their ex-boyfriends or ex-husbands or friends. It's a very, very serious problem, and also a very, very special victim that we deal with and that we work with, and that is the domestic violence unit. In addition to that, we have a border prosecution unit that deals with the issues that arise by us living and being located right next to the river and to Mexico. And most of these border prosecution cases are drug cases. We have a special investigations unit that also deals with drug interdiction and trying to dismantle traffic organizations that operate here in the valley. We have different divisions within the DA's office. We have a victims division that deals with victims, tries to assist victims that need help. When you suffer injuries, when you suffer destruction of your house, or even when you have to, because one of your loved ones has been murdered, we help them in trying to get the expenses paid for the funeral, which is very, very expensive. We have an intake division that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. The intake division is that division that prepares all the cases for misdemeanor to felonies. We also have different programs that we deal with here at the office. These programs are what you call alternative dispositions. We are firm believers that nobody is perfect, that people make mistakes, and that we hope to be able to rehabilitate these people that make mistakes by giving them a second chance. And what I'm talking about is young offenders like yourselves that are going to school and that on any given day exercise poor judgment or got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. After dealing with that and recognizing that defendant is really not a bad person, that defendant does have something to offer to our society and our community. We work with that defendant through a rehabilitation and through giving them a second chance. And some of those programs are what we call pretrial diversion programs, where a young offender, usually with a misdemeanor, is put on a program where he or she is asked to complete certain criteria and certain conditions. And if this person completes those criteria and those conditions, then the case is dismissed, because we don't want to give you a criminal history. A criminal history is a very, very serious thing, and I'd like to talk to you about that at this point, because it is something that you yourself hopefully may not, but you may have to deal with. And let me talk about it in this way. Right now, each one of you has worked very hard to get to where you are right now. Obviously, you went through high school, you graduated, and now you're going to college, and as you're finding out, number one, it's very expensive, and it's very challenging, and you're making sacrifices to do this. And what I want to impress on you is that you have to be very, very careful. And I'm going to talk to you here, not as a district attorney, but as a parent, as a friend, as somebody that's going to give you advice. You have to be very, very careful what you do right now, because it may affect you, and in fact, it may destroy your career if you're not careful. You all are very young right now, and it's great to be young. It's great to have fun. There's nothing wrong with that. But let me just tell you that, today is Wednesday, that this Friday, I guarantee it, that this Friday somebody, just like yourself, some young person, some young lady, some young man that is going to college, whose parents have sacrificed tremendously to get him or her to that point, and who has very high expectations of becoming a professional, that this Friday somebody's life, just like yourselves, is going to be ruined. Why? Because that person, I hate to say it, but somebody in Cameron County, just like yourself, is going to get arrested Friday. And that person is going to get arrested for a DWI, drinking while intoxicated, for a possession case of marijuana or other drug, or for an assault because they got into a fight, or for theft because they did what is called a beer run. And from that arrest, that's going to be the end of that career for that person, because that person is going to get what is called a criminal history. A criminal history is very much like your educational history, where when you applied to college, they wanted to know your grades that you made, they wanted to know what programs you participated, they wanted to know what extracurricular activities you were a part of, because all that is good in deciding whether they're going to admit you to their school. Well, along with that, you're going to have a criminal history. And a criminal history is like a tattoo, but probably even worse. Because if you have a tattoo, you can put a shirt over it and cover it and nobody will see it. But a criminal history is something that will follow you from now till the rest of your life. Here at the DA's office, as I just talked about, we hire 108 people. And they're very, very good jobs. It's very, prestigious to say that you work at the DA's office. It's good pay, it's good benefits. And continuously, we're always hiring people because we have openings. And I can tell you of situations that I've confronted myself where I will be interviewing, two young ladies, a young man and a young lady, who showed up early for the interview with me, who were very neatly dressed and professionally dressed for the interview, who answered all my questions very, very well, who I decided, either one of these individuals would make a great employee for the DA's office. They would represent the office well, and they would do a good job for their community. So after I conclude the interview for both the individuals, I can't decide who to hire because I only have one opening and I've got two applicants, and most of the time we have more than two. And what has happened in the past is that I will tell them to wait for me here in the conference room, and I will go back to my office and do a computer check on criminal history. And I will find out that, lo and behold, one of the applicants before me has been arrested before. Well, guess who I'm not going to hire? I'm not going to hire the person who got arrested. So I have to come back into the conference room where I'm conducting the interview, and I have to let that person know that he or she cannot be hired here. And they've asked me, "Sir, what did I do wrong?" I said, "You didn't do anything wrong. You were here early, you presented yourself professionally, you answered the questions, you would be a great employee. But I see that on your record, your criminal history, you have been arrested before. And here at the DA's office, we can't hire people with criminal histories." Unfortunately, what's going to happen with that person is that person is going to go ahead and continue interviewing with other corporations, with other companies, with other organizations, and guess what? They're going to give her the same answer. You have a criminal history, we cannot hire you. So I say that to say that you have to be very, very careful. Obviously, nobody leaves the house on any given morning, so you know what? I think I'll get arrested tonight. We don't do that, but it happens. It happens when you get in that car that you thought about it, and there was a little voice in your head telling you, don't get in that car, and you got in that car anyway. It happens when you go to that party that your mother told you not to go to, and you went anyway, and there's a raid and you get arrested. It happens when you hang out with that friend that your mother or your father told you don't hang around with him, and you did, and you go to the store and he ends up stealing something and both y'all get arrested. So it happens on any given time, in just a few seconds, in just a few minutes, on one day. Everything that you worked for, everything that your parents have worked for is gone. It's ruined. So please, it's great to be young, it's great to have fun, but be very, very, very careful with what you do every time. Every time. So we've been talking about the administration component of the office. In other words, the number of staff, the number of cases, what we do here, and just the administration. What I'd like to do now is move on to the prosecution component, which is what office is all about. What is a prosecutor? What is a prosecutor? First of all, a prosecutor is a lawyer. And to be a lawyer, you have to finish, your high school. You have to go to college for 4 years. And then you have to go to law school. And law school is a 3-year program. So to be a lawyer, you have to go to law school. And then after you finish your 3 years, you have to take the infamous state bar, which is a very, very difficult and very challenging exam that you take. And you have to pass that exam or else you don't get licensed. So you could conceivably finish law school and take the bar exam, the test, and if you never pass that test, you can never become a lawyer. So again, first, a prosecutor is a lawyer. Here at the office, we have 42 prosecutors. Being a prosecutor is a very rewarding job. Now, having said that, I got to tell you that it's also very challenging and very stressful because you are put in a position, especially in a murder case, in a child abuse case, where you are speaking, where you're representing somebody that cannot speak or that can't represent themselves. So obviously it's a very demanding job and it's a very challenging job, but it's a very rewarding job. The prosecutors here at the office, we have 42 of them, and usually the prosecutors start as young. They're fresh out of law school and they just took the bar, and they come to work for the DA's office for several reasons, because they want to get experience. Now, we do have here at the office, we're very fortunate to have a core group of career prosecutors like Miss Adela. Adela and I go way back to the late 90s, early 90s. She and I have been together working for the state, and then she went on to become AUSA, and then she came back to work for the state. So she and I have been started our careers together, and we're probably going to end our careers together. But we do have career prosecutors that have been working as here for the DA's office for 8 to 10 years. But most of them are young. And by young, I mean 25, 26, 27-year-olds. And as a prosecutor, you prepare a case, and the cases that we get here, let me talk to you about how we get these cases here. We work with the Brownsville Police Department, with Harlingen Police Department, with all the different police departments in the county. We work with the Texas Rangers. We work with the federal government, with the FBI, DEA, HSI. So at any time anybody gets arrested in Cameron County and is charged with a state crime, the police will bring us the case, and the case is a file with papers, with documents, with reports, with interviews, with pictures, telling us, what this person is accused to have done wrong. Let's take a murder case, for example. And in fact, today is September the 23rd. On September the 21st, we had a murder in Port Isabel that we're working on right now. The Port Isabel Police Department is working up that case with the Texas Rangers. What they're doing right now is they're talking to the neighbors. They're getting pictures from different cameras in that neighborhood. They're talking to the doctors about it, but the autopsy has been performed on the decedent. They're going to work up that case. That's a real case, and they're going to bring it here to this office, probably in about 3 to 4 weeks. When they bring us the case, we're going to have an assistant district attorney review the case in what we call the intake division. And that assistant district attorney is going to look at every document in that case, and is going to make a determination that the case is ready, that we have everything in that case so we can prosecute the defendant who is being charged with causing the death of this individual. The assistant district attorney can determine that it's not ready, that it needs further investigation. So in that case, we'll be sent back to Port Isabel Police Department for them, and we're asking them for them to do further work. At some point, the case is going to be completed. In that case, because it is a felony, will be presented to the grand jury. A grand jury is a body of civilians, of community members that sit here in this room. In fact, this is the grand jury room. And those are 12 individuals that are going to listen to the case. The ADA is going to present that case to them, is going to tell them why we believe this individual is the one that murdered our victim. And we're going to show them pictures, we're going to read statements to them, and we're going to ask the grand jury to indict that individual. We're going to ask that grand jury to return a true bill. And the grand jury's purpose is kind of archaic, but it goes way back to when there was kings, in Europe, and where our criminal justice system started. They wanted to make sure that the king didn't just take advantage of filing charges against people that he didn't like or his enemies. So the grand jury still serves that purpose, and the grand jury ensures that the DA, myself, or my assistant district attorneys are not being vindictive against anybody, or not indicting somebody because we don't like them or because we don't, because they're our political enemies. So the grand jury is a check. They make a determination, an independent determination, yes, this person is the one that more than likely committed the crime. So once the grand jury deliberates and we step out of the room and they deliberate in secret, and we come back and they tell us, yes, we agree with you, Mr. DA, this person should stand charges for the crime of murder. Then we take that indictment and we go next door to a district court, and we present the case to a jury, a petit jury, which is different than the grand jury. A petit jury consists of 12 individuals that sit in the courtroom and listen to all the witnesses testify and testimony. They look at all the statements, they look at all the pictures, and at the end of the trial, they deliberate in secret, and they determine whether or not the person is guilty or not guilty. And that's what we do every day here. Right now, unfortunately, because of the COVID, we're not having jury trials because we're having logistical problems in being able to bring a large group of people to select a jury. But it's very fascinating. It's living in the United States, and as you all probably were born and raised here, the jury trial in our criminal justice system gives the defendant a lot of rights that other people don't have. And I ask you not to take those for granted, because there are countries that don't have the same rights. And some of those rights is that in this country, pursuant to our Constitution, a defendant is presumed innocent until the DA and the staff do their job of convincing the jury that this individual committed the crime, and we have to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's very challenging and it's very difficult. We take that job very serious, and because of that, there's a lot of preparation that goes into getting ready for a trial and going to trial. Again, the case prep is very demanding. We have to make sure that we have everything in that case. We have to make sure that the case is ready to go. We have to make sure that we have the experts that we need, the exhibits that we are going to have to present, and get ready and present the best case that we can, because we only get one opportunity. If that defendant is found not guilty, then that's the end of it. We cannot retry that person. We don't get a second chance. And I have no problem with that. I think that's the way it should be, and we embrace the way that it is set up. But going to trial is very demanding and is very stressful. On any given day when we're in trial, you'll have prosecutors that are here in the evening. You'll have prosecutors that are here working on Saturday and Sunday, trying to get ready for trial. And even during the trial, they work on evenings and they work on weekends to make sure that they do the best thing that they can for the victim that we represent. Especially when that victim is a murder victim that can't speak, especially when that victim is a child that's been abused, who cannot even defend herself. It's a very rewarding job. It's very stressful, but it's very rewarding to stand up and speak up for those people that cannot speak for themselves, that can't defend themselves, and we take that very seriously. A trial is very demanding, very challenging, and a trial starts with bringing in 60 people to do what is called a voir dire. And Adela will probably talk to you about later on about a voir dire. A voir dire is where we bring 60 people into a courtroom and we ask them questions about whether or not they know the defendant, whether or not they know the defense lawyer, do they know the prosecutor, have they had situations where they themselves have been victims, have they had situations where they themselves have been broken in, their house has been broken into. And we try and get 12 people that are going to be objective, 12 people that have not made up their mind, and 12 people that are going to be able to sit there and listen to all the evidence and give us a verdict at the end of the trial. The trial commences with the voir dire, with the selection of the jury. Once we have the jury, then we sit the jury here in the courtroom that you see like on television, and then we start presenting witnesses. The witnesses are the people that were there. A witness can be an eyewitness. An eyewitness is, just like the name says, a person who saw the crime committed. It's quite frankly quite rare that we have eyewitnesses. So for the most part, we have what we call circumstantial evidence witnesses. Witnesses that weren't there but can tell us the last time that they saw the defendant, the last time that they saw the victim, what they may have heard, what they may have seen, and also, even though they weren't eyewitnesses, based on the circumstances, the jury can take their testimony and decide if the defendant is guilty or not guilty. As part of the evidence, in addition to witnesses, we bring in pictures of wounds, of whatever the weapon may have been. We bring in the actual gun, if we have a gun. We bring in the actual drugs. We bring sketches. We bring phone records. We bring medical records, and go through the whole trial, which may be a one-day trial, maybe a 2-week trial, maybe a 1-witness trial, maybe a 10-witness trial. So at the end of that trial, then we conclude and we give our closing arguments. Our closing argument is why we believe this defendant committed the crime, and we ask the jury to find the defendant guilty. The jury will go back and deliberate by themselves, and they'll give us a verdict. Obviously, if the verdict is not guilty, then the trial is over, and the defendant gets to go home, and the case is over. If the defendant is found guilty, then we proceed to the punishment. And the punishment is also very important, because the punishment is what we as prosecutors call or talk about sending a message to the community. And the message is, as prosecutors, that we want the community to know that if you commit this kind of crime, the jury is going to find you accountable and you're going to be punished. So depending on the crime and depending on the defendant's criminal history, we will ask the jury to sentence the defendant to the penitentiary. Depending on the degree of the offense, if the defendant was found guilty of a third-degree offense, then that defendant can be sentenced from anywhere from 2 to 10 years in the penitentiary. If the defendant was convicted of a second degree, then that defendant can be sentenced anywhere from 2 to 20. If the defendant was convicted of a first degree, that defendant can be sentenced from anywhere from 5 to 99 years or life in the penitentiary. So the jury will come back with their decision on punishment, and will read that verdict to the jury, and the defendant will thereafter be sentenced and be taken off to start serving his time in the penitentiary. As you can tell, it's a very challenging job. It's very stressful, but it's also very rewarding. People that work here at the DA's office, I want to think that they like their job. I want to think that they enjoy working here. But as I indicated, there are lawyers. They have families. And quite frankly, a lot of the prosecutors, even though they would like to stay and continue working at the DA's office, they get to the point where they cannot afford to work here at the DA's office, because we operate on taxpayers' money, and as taxpayers we can't afford to pay them what they're worth. So an assistant district attorney will probably stay here at the DA's office anywhere from 3 to 5 years. Once they get past 5 years, most of them have to leave because they have other commitments, financial commitments, and their families are growing, and they need to go out into private practice where they can make more income. And I don't blame them for that. I understand. I mean, that's the circuit, and that's the cycle. But I ask that you consider, obviously continue your education and finish your education, make good grades, and consider going to law school. But in order to get into law school, you're going to have good grades. And, of course, you're going to have 0 criminal history. But I invite you to continue your studies. I ask you to consider going to law school. And if you graduate to consider becoming a prosecutor. I think you will enjoy it. I think you will find it very rewarding. And I think that it's something that you will never forget. Being a lawyer and being any kind of lawyer is very, very good. Whether you're a business lawyer, a family lawyer, whatever it is that you might do. But here at the DA's office as prosecutors, we like to think that we do God's work. We do our work to try and provide a safe community, which is where I started. And above all, we seek justice. And justice sometimes means making hard decisions. Sometimes justice means that we don't get a conviction, but that's fine. We are not about getting convictions. We are not about winning or losing. We are about doing the right thing and bringing justice to our victims and providing a safe community. So I thank you for taking this class. I ask that you continue your education, go to law school, pass the bar, and come be a prosecutor. You'll love it.
Dear students, I hope you enjoyed the statement made by my boss, Mr. Saenz. I am very blessed to work for Mr. Saenz, and I cannot say more praise for Mr. Saenz, and I'm very grateful that he made this presentation. You will, if you listen to his presentation, it's exactly what you need to know in Chapter 2 of your textbook. It will help you tremendously. Thank you, Mr. Saenz.